now foreshadowing this ship, the greatest navy the world has ever seen.
Standing on the main deck of the USS North Carolina, it's impossible not to be awed by the offensive firepower of the battleship's 9 enormous 16-inch guns, which are capable of firing shells that weigh almost a ton. But what about the ship's first line of defense? It would have to be equally intimidating, yes? Powerful weapons guaranteed to strike fear in the heart of the enemy? Could it be the 50 caliber machine guns? Or what about the 20-millimeter cannons? Imagine instead a menacing crew of deckhands wielding
All hands!
Paintbrushes?
Man your painting station.
Captain McKittrick, I accept command of the United States ship North Carolina.
On October 2nd, 1961, when a flotilla of tugboats nudged the 729-foot-long, 35,000-ton North Carolina through the 500-foot-wide Cape Fear River, it clipped a floating restaurant. That's gonna leave a mark. That day, the mighty battleship wore the standard peacetime haze gray that adorns most Navy ships. It's the same color used in a scale replica of the North Carolina that model builder Jim Gower recently spent 8 months restoring.
What we're doing here is that we're fitting the propeller into the drive shaft.
This is the oldest known model of the ship.
This particular model came out in 1939 before the battleship was even launched. And they based the design on the British and the French and the German warships prior to World War II. So it's not a fully detailed model.
Jim has a long and endearing relationship with the USS North Carolina. He donated nickels and dimes as a Raleigh schoolboy to the Save Our Ship campaign that brought the battleship to Wilmington. He even skipped school and drove down to see the battleship arrive at its permanent home in 1961.
It was something that I was obviously interested in since I built model boats from the time I was 12 or 14, and can remember vividly how humongous, how big it was just coming up to Cape Fear.
He's seen the battleship dozens of times since, but Jim was surprised when he saw the ship had been painted in one of its wartime camouflage schemes in 1995.
It's almost like her soul is saying, here's my razzle dazzle, this is why I'm called the showboat. It just changed the whole personality of the boat. Like, here I am, I'm the showboat.
Here's the story. 40 years earlier, when the North Carolina was earning her battle stripes, she was painted in several different camouflages designed not to conceal the ship, but to deceive the enemy. It all started in World War I. At the time, the British Navy was losing multiple vessels a day to German U-boats. Enter Norman Wilkinson, a British sailor who also happened to be an artist. He recognized the futility of trying to hide a huge ship with a huge smokestack on the open ocean. But what if you could paint it in a way that made it harder for the submariner launching the torpedoes to figure out your range, speed, and direction? The Admiralty named this baffling invention Dazzle Camouflage.
A German camera aboard a U-boat records an attack.
Before the advent of radar systems, submariners had to look through their tiny periscope to quickly determine the direction a ship was headed. The idea is that the different Dazzle paint schemes cut up the ship's silhouette, making it harder for submarines to get a fix on the ship and fire at it.
The Nazi crew is tense as they come to the surface for another shot.
During World War II, the United States Navy expanded upon the concept, coming up with their own design variations and their own snazzier name. Thus, Dazzle became Razzle Dazzle.
Down into the depths to try to escape the oncoming fighting ship. Straight to the target.
The North Carolina is the most decorated U.S. battleship of World War II and participated in every major offensive in the Pacific Theater. So naturally, it saw a lot of action. In 1944, while the North Carolina was berthed at Pearl Harbor for repairs related to a submarine attack, The ship was painted in a razzle-dazzle paint scheme called Measure 32. Suddenly, the port and starboard sides of the North Carolina and other fighting ships across the fleet were transformed from blank canvases into cubist paintings that would make Picasso proud. The strong angular lines and vivid contrasting colors were striking, and if the mighty North Carolina was any judge, effective. She rode out the war without further battle damage, testifying to the power of the paintbrush.
In Technicolor.
The North Carolina is pretty unique among historic ships. Across the country, World War II ships still serve, either on permanent display or at museums, but only a handful appear in camouflage.
The Alabama, I know for sure. The New Jersey and the Massachusetts are all typical battleship gray paints right now. So we have the distinction of having a nice 32 camouflage color on our boat.
Now these days, Jim wants to construct his first model of the North Carolina in her wartime paint job, but it's going to be a lot of work.
Well, that's a lot easier said than done. Yeah, we always kid each other about how long will it take to do this particular part of the camouflage scheme, and we'll say, oh, maybe a month and a case of wine. But you learn how to walk away and just pace yourself on something.
Of course, keeping the paint scheme in shape on the actual battleship is no small task either.
We have one staff full-time painter. I often joke that he's got one of the most secure jobs in the world. If all he's got to do is keep moving, keep painting, and there will always be work.
Chris Fargo manages day-to-day operations of the ship, including the full-time painter that the North Carolina has on staff. The job requires hundreds of gallons of paint and constant vigilance.
When you consider the fact that this is 99 million pounds of steel in a saltwater environment, it's absolutely critical to keep a good coating between the environment and the steel, and that's our paint. So it's an ongoing process. It never stops, and it's absolutely vital that we keep it up.
And according to Fargo, the best way to see the ship in all its glory is from the platform circling the ship. The battleship sees thousands of visitors every year, and they never cease to be amazed by both the size of the dreadnought and its unique paint. For that, we can credit those entrusted with honoring the legacy of the Battleship North Carolina, who chose to repaint the ship in Measure 32 back in 1995. Given the size of the canvas with which they were working, it was a masterstroke in more ways than one. If you were dazzled by this story, then you'll want to see our whole Hidden History series right here on YouTube. So subscribe for more. You can also read all about the Battleship North Carolina in the June issue of Our State magazine. Grab a copy from the newsstand and subscribe to get future issues delivered to your mailbox. Visit ourstate.com/subscribe and enter promo code Hidden History to become a subscriber today.